Hello, everyone. I'm Arunima from Knit and Otter, and today I'm here to share my 2024 blanket cal with you all. I'm very excited about this. This is going to be my fifth year of hosting a year-long CAL, and I am very pleased with how my blanket turned out, and I'm hoping that you all will like it as well. This year is going to be slightly different than the previous years. The previous years we were making squares, but this year I decided to go with hexagons instead. And I'm always experimenting with new stitches and techniques, and I decided to try the Tunisian in the round technique for this year. I actually have a few patterns that I have used this technique in, but I hadn't really explored this in a lot of detail until last year when I actually started thinking about the idea for the CAL, and it's been a wonderful journey. I have learned so much. I have tried everything that I could, and I've learned different tips and tricks, and I have put everything together into this CAL, and hopefully you all will enjoy it. So in this cal, we are going to make a total of 30 hexagons. So the pattern comes with 30 hexagons. And the blanket that you see in the pictures, that's made with 29. I put 29 together and I had to leave one out because the placement wasn't working out. With 30 hexagons, I couldn't get a good shape. But I made 30 hexagons. I used 29 to make the blanket. You're welcome to use how many ever patterns you'd like, how many ever hexagons you want, whatever works best for you. It's going to be, but the pattern will come with 30, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in this video later. Uh, Quickly talking about the in the round technique. So it is a technique where we are working in the round. We work with a double-ended hook, which essentially means that there's a hook on both ends, and we work the forward pass with one hook and the return pass with the other hook, and we work in a continuous spiral. So it's very with this technique you can make some very beautiful intricate patterns, and we don't change color in the middle of any round. So the color work that you see is based is built using different stitches. So we use knit stitches and reverse stitches. Knit stitches bring out the forward pass color, and the reverse stitches the return pass color, and that's how we build these stitches. So the hexagons that we are making are a specialized form of this technique where we only use reverse and knit stitches to make the designs. This technique can be used with any, you can use any stitch to work these patterns, in the round patterns, but for this cal, we are only going to focus on the reverse and knit stitches to make these hexagons. And the details about the cal are that there will be a total of 30 hexagons, as I mentioned before, and I'm going to release a hexagon on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is, I'm in Melbourne, so that's when I'm going to release my patterns. And the schedule is mentioned on my blog. We start on January 2nd, and we finish just before Thanksgiving, so that you can use your Thanksgiving break to put your hexagons together if you haven't already done them, and make your border. So these the schedule is such that I start a little slow. I do initially there'll be 1 week of where we'll make a practice swatch, and that will also tell you a little bit about the gauge, and you can figure out how large or small your hexagons are going to be. So we'll start with the gauge and a practice swatch, and then we're going to do hexagons weekly, bi-weekly hexagons, so one hexagon every other week, so that you can get some time to understand the technique, to practice, and then make your hexagons. Have enough time for that. But then we'll switch to weekly releases, and that's and once we get closer to the end of the year, it's going to be bi-weekly again. So this, I had to do this because I had to make sure that there was enough time for you to absorb a new technique and start making your hexagons. But I also had to make sure that I have enough time to release all 30. So we're not doing 2 in 1 week, because I just thought staggering them was better. So that's the schedule, and you can find the full schedule on my blog post. I'm going to put a link to my blog post in the description below. This is going to be a free cal. The instructions will be available for free on my website. And I'm going to offer the chart free for 24 hours. So you can download the chart within 24 hours of the release of of the square of the hexagon. And it's I've been asked if that would be across different time zones. I'm going to try, but it would be best if you could keep track of the releases either by email or Facebook or whatever works best for you. If you sign up for my email, I'm going to send a notification when a hexagon is released, and if not, I'll be on Instagram, I'll be on Facebook, it'll be on Pinterest. So there's different places where you can follow this ad. So just try your best to download the pattern, the chart within 24 hours of the release. Uh, and there is so aside from the free version, so once so but the written instructions will always be there. So you don't have to worry about missing the written instructions. They will always be free on the blog. But there are other options to be you can purchase the pattern. I have actually multiple options this time. So the first one is that you can buy a set of 20 hexagons, the dense pattern, so all of those together, that's 20 hexagons. Then the other option is to buy 30 hexagons, all 30 of those. And I have this option is available on Ravelry and a non-Ravelry platform, and I use ThriveCart as my non-Ravelry platform. And I also so the 10 hexagons which are not as dense, I call it the extension pack. I had to name it something, so that's what it's called. And that's pretty much it. So using a non-Ravelry platform like ThriveCart gives me the opportunity to offer you other discounts. So I have a course that I created for the Tunisian in the round technique. It's called A Beginner's Guide to Tunisian in the Round. You're not required to buy that. I'm going to have free resources for the cal. So if you want to follow the cal, there will be videos on YouTube which you can use for free. But if you are interested in the course, then I am offering a discount with the purchases, which you can look at all the details. I have a comparison chart on my blog post, so you can look at what I am offering there. So there's that. I talked about the schedule. So with the pattern, you'll get the written instructions. There'll be charts. There will be supplies needed. There'll be sizes of the hexagons, the blanket. I'm going to put all of that in the instructions. There'll be instructions for each hexagon separately. There will be a chart for each hexagon. There will be instructions for joining and the border, and there will be support videos. So that's what you get from the cal. If you join the cal, that's what you get. If you make a purchase, you'll get ad-free support in terms of you'll get PDF patterns, and you could also purchase an option where you get ad-free videos. So there's a bunch of different options, and it seems like it's a lot, but I've documented everything on my blog post, so you can go look at that there. Now I'm going to talk about the details of the blanket. So this is going to be an intermediate level pattern. So if you are new to Tunisian crochet, I recommend practicing these stitches with separately before you start the cal. Actually, I recommend practicing the stitches either way, but if you're new to Tunisian crochet, then I definitely want you to practice stitches flat, working flat rather than directly in the round, because it takes some time to understand the stitches and to work with the double-ended hook and working the two passes with two different strands of yarn. So it's a lot to do all at once. And I personally prefer to learn things in bits and pieces. So I practice my stitches independently, learn about them, so that when I'm working on the in the round technique, at that time, I don't have to worry about learning a new stitch and mess up my final project. So once I have mastered the stitches separately, that is when I actually put them together and learn the technique. So if you're new to Tunisian crochet, please practice your stitches separately. If you're new to Tunisian in the round, then I would recommend using my tutorials and practicing making a small hexagon first to see how it works up. It is The stitches are not that hard, the ones that we use to make the designs, but I use twisted stitches for the corners, and that can get a little complicated to understand. But if you understand how Tunisian crochet stitches work and you understand which loops and bars there are and which ones to pick, then it gets easier with time. Once you practice, it does get easier with time. So generally about the in the round technique, no matter what shape you're making, the first 4 or 5 rounds are the hardest by far. And they're hard for me even now, even though I've made so many different in the round projects. It's still hard for me to get past the first 4 or 5 rounds. They take a lot of focus, a lot of attention, and you just have to stick with it and practice. And it does get easier with time. So uh, don't give up on it if you're starting new. Just keep going with it, keep practicing, and it will get better. And I try to offer a relaxed pace in all of my cals so that you have enough time in between releases, so that you can take some time. And there's a great community. I have a Facebook group which has grown with time, but we have a bunch of amazing people there. So if I am not available to answer questions, which I try to get back to you within 24 hours. But in case I'm not around, there are other people who will be working on the same blanket, and they will be able to offer you support or help if you needed it when I'm not available. So just again, it's not required to be on Facebook and in my group, but if you'd like that kind of support, that's a great place that you can get it at. Uh, there will so the size of the hexagons, the size of my hexagons, it's every hexagon is of width, the edge is of width 8 inches, and because it's a hexagon, that the at the longest point, it's the longest distance within the hexagon is 16 inches, and the height is about 14 inches. So that's every hexagon. And the way I've placed my hexagons, the overall blanket at the widest point is 98 inches, and the height is about 64 inches. So whatever placement you decide, your blanket size will depend on that. And I'm going to share the placement that I have used, and I'm going to put all of these dimensions and measurements in the pattern so you have all of it handy. uh, there is also going to be a practice swatch, which is going to be much smaller. I think the edge is between 2 and 3 inches for that one, so it's smaller. But if you're able to make that practice swatch, you should be able to make all the hexagons. So the idea is to start small. You can start making the small hexagon and then move on to the larger hexagons. Now, yarn. There have been a lot of questions since I announced this cal about the yarn. The yarn is really light in weight. The one that I've used, it's Knit Picks Chroma fingering weight yarn. And the reason I did that was because I started with DK weight yarn when I started making the hexagons, and I quickly realized that the hexagons were going to be really, really large for the level of detail that I wanted. And that's not an issue in general, but I wanted to use most of my hexagons to make my blanket. So I decided to go down in terms of the yarn size, yarn weight, and I used fingering weight yarn. And to get the hexagons, the 8-inch edge hexagons, uh, that's the weight I had to use to get the design I wanted. So just a combination of everything. But you can use whatever yarn you want. The only difference would be that your hexagons will be of different size than mine. And to be honest, it's easier to learn this technique with heavier weight yarn. Fingering weight is slightly harder to work with. Uh, but if you know the technique, I would definitely give it a try with fingering weight yarn. There's just something about this blanket. It's very nice and drapey, and it's not very heavy, and the design comes out really beautifully with this weight yarn. But there's no reason you could to not use heavier weight yarn if that's what you like and if that works better for you. So I have used Chroma fingering weight yarn by Knit Picks, and I've used two colors. The forward pass color for me is Bear. I used about 11 skeins, and the return pass color was Vermont. I've used about 10 skeins of that. uh, I have there's extra bare yarn that I've used because the forward pass takes slightly more yarn than the return pass for me, and then I joined and made the border with that color. But I don't have individual amounts of for per hexagon, but I know that for every two skeins, for every one bear and one Vermont, I was able to make three hexagons out of that. So there are other alternative yarns which I have listed. One on my website, it's V Crochet Palette fingering weight yarn, which I actually made my first hexagon using that yarn, and it worked up. It worked up really well. So that yarn does not come with gradient or variegated colors, so that's why I didn't want to make it with two solid colors. But that's a good yarn to replacement yarn if you wanted. Uh, I use Knitpicks yarn a lot because I moved to Australia recently and they ship to Australia, and I really like their yarn. I love working with it. I used Chroma for my entire blanket and it has worked up really beautifully. So that's the reason I use Knitpicks yarn, but you could use any yarn of your choice. Now the hook. There, you will need a double-ended hook that you absolutely need for working in the round. And now there are two kinds of hooks. There are two kinds of double-ended hooks that you could use. There are ones like these that come with a hook on both ends. There's this and there's this. And these are generally, they have the same hook size on both ends, and that's okay. That's one. And the other is that you could use a hook set, an interchangeable hook set. I have this one, which is a Denny's to go two hook set. So this one comes with a bunch of hooks. I am already using some in various projects, so these are missing, but they come for every size. There's two hooks. So you could build a double-ended hook by picking whatever size you want, two hooks, and then joining them with a cord. Uh, but if you have an interchangeable hook set which does not have two hooks of the same size, you can use two hooks of slightly different sizes. So actually, I used two hooks of different sizes, even though I had two of the same. My tension comes out to be better with that. So I used a hook of size 5 millimeters for the forward pass and 4.5 millimeters for the return pass. And I joined them with a cord, and that's how I built my double-ended hook. So if you are using a different weight yarn, or your gauge is the fabric that you're building works out better with different hooks, just make sure that you use the smaller hook for the return pass and the larger hook for the forward pass. Now, about picking hooks, I always recommend trying different hook sizes for whatever yarn you want to work with, because everybody's tension and style of crocheting is different. What works for me may not work out great for you. So if you have the option, if you have multiple hooks that you could try with, I would definitely try with two or three different sizes hooks and see which fabric works best for you, and then work with that. So there is no right or wrong answer here. It's just what works best for you, pick that. But if you're working with this for the first time, start with a hook that is two sizes larger than the one recommended on the yarn label for your forward pass and go from there. Uh, I also used a single-ended hook, which is like a regular traditional crochet hook for making the border. And I just used my Clover Amour hooks that I have a set of those, and I think I used the 3.5 millimeters hook from that. That's what was recommended on the yarn label, but I'll put that in the pattern so you know exactly which hook size to use. Aside from that, I block all my hexagons. They seem to be curling up when you make them, and that is usually resolved by blocking. All of my hexagons were flat after I blocked them, and because I'm using wool, it's this yarn blocks really well. I just wet it and then I pin it to a blocking mat, and I let it dry, and then comes out flat. That's how I block my hexagons. And if you are using uh, acrylic or any other fiber which is not natural, then steam blocking works better. So just letting you know that some people do not like to block their individual hexagons or squares, and that's okay, because when you join them, they will flatten out. But I personally prefer to block individual hexagons or squares in the past, so that I can it's easier for me to join them, and I also have to take photographs individually, so it helps with that. But even if I weren't, taking individual photographs, I prefer to store my hexagons straight, flat, so that when I take them out to join them, they're nice and flat, and it's just easy to see the edges and then join it. But it's completely up to you. If you want to join them, uh, if you want to block them, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. It's not a requirement for this cal to block them. How to follow this cal? There is multiple ways. I have a Pinterest board where I'm going to link all of the individual hexagons as I release them. There's my Facebook group, which I think is the best place to get community support. And again, it's not a requirement. I know a lot of people don't use Facebook, and that's completely fine, but that just it has grown over time, and there's a bunch of great people there if you want to join. uh, a lot of other people who are working on the same project. I will post on Instagram, so you can keep an eye on Instagram and know when a new pattern is released. You could subscribe to my email list. I think that is the best way in case uh, I I could be away from Facebook, I could be away from my social media, but I always keep an eye on my email, and I always send out email notifications whenever there's something new. So if you're on my email list, that's probably the best way of following the cal. And you can purchase the ebook, which I will send out separate email notifications if you have made a purchase. You will not get any of the other notifications. You will only get the cal related notifications. So if you wanted to go that route, again, that's not a requirement. You can follow it for free on my blog, but if you did make a purchase, you'll get a separate email. I'm just going through my notes to see if I've missed anything. Oh yes. So if you make a purchase, you're going to also get an empty chart which you can use to design your own hexagons. It's actually not that hard. If you do not make the purchase, that's completely fine. When you receive your hexagons, you could, or if you download a chart from my website, you can see how I've built them in Google Sheets. So you could just create them in Google Sheets on your own. We increase every 2 rounds, and you will be able to see a pattern how it's done. And if you are not making a purchase and you still would like to design your own, you should be able to look at the ones that I am offering, and then you can design your own. But if you don't want to do that, or if you've made a purchase, I'm going to offer a free empty chart which you can use to design your own in the round hexagon patterns. And just in terms of video support, there is going to be support at pretty much every step. Like I'm going to offer tutorials for these stitches. I'm going to offer tutorials for making the hexagons. I'm going to do a practice swatch in the first week, and I'm going to teach you how to uh, read written instructions, read the charts, and actually make a hexagon using those. And there's going to be a tutorial for joining. There's going to be a tutorial for the border. And anything else in between, if something comes up which I feel like it's easier to explain through tutorials, I will add those as I go. But as of now, the ones that I mentioned are the ones that I've planned. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. And I'm also going to add support for left-handed people. So the way I make my left-handed videos is that I make them right-handed because I'm right-handed, and then I use a filter to flip them. And I can't do that uh, with the ones which there's text on the screen, because then the text would be flipped, or the charts that they would be flipped. But all stitch tutorials and any techniques that I use that don't involve reading a chart or a written pattern, I will offer left-handed support for those. And if you are left-handed and you think that I can offer anything else which will help you work this technique better or understand it better, please reach out to me. I'm always open to suggestions. So just wanted to put that out there, and I will have some instructions in the pattern document itself, so you know how to read the charts left-handed. Uh, and that's pretty much it about the cal. I know that was a lot of information, but I wanted to put everything out there for you. I try to make my cals as easy to follow as possible. So there are no set rules. You're welcome to pick any yarn, any hook, any designs. If you design your own, I would love to see those. So my main aim is for people to learn the technique and to be able to get creative, create their own designs. I would even love to see if you create any new patterns with this technique. I just really want you to enjoy it, and hopefully all of us will have beautiful hexagons at the end, towards the end of the year. And you don't even have to make a blanket with those. You could make whatever other projects you want to. I'll actually put together a blog post where I'll find different things that you can make with hexagons. So to give you ideas about what else you can do with them, if you didn't want to make all 30, or if you wanted to make more than 30, what you could do with them. So I hope this has been useful. I do hope that I will see you in the Cal. It can look intimidating at first, but please give it a try. I promise after the first 5 rounds, it gets a lot easier than the first 5 rounds. So thank you for joining me in this video. I hopefully will see you in my Cal.